I don't believe that. I still don't. 6. Have I got 8? Have I got 8? Is Mayo here? Mr. Mayo, is he? Okay, good. I didn't want to lose you. I need you in my quorum. Yeah, you're my quorum, aren't you? Would the meeting please come to order? We want to go ahead and get started because this is Thursday and a lot of people got other meetings and other things to do. And a lot of them told me they want to go home, but we're going to stay here and get it done right. So if I could have my audience please have a seat and quit using their cell phones. Everybody please turn your cell phones off, and I appreciate it. This time, Randy, Mr. Representative Nix, if I could have you please. What's your number down there? All right, if you would please, if you would give our invocation, I would certainly appreciate it.
Be glad to. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity to serve. Lord, we just pray now that you would grace us with your presence, with your wisdom, with your knowledge, with your patience, to accomplish the things that you would have us to for our students and our teachers and our education system in the state of Georgia. We make this prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. Again, we welcome everybody here today. Do we have any teachers out there or principals or superintendents? Raise your hand. All right. Oh, come on, Lee. Stand up and introduce yourself. I met you earlier. We're so glad to have you with us. Very good. Instructional coach. Very good. That's a good program. We appreciate you being here with us. Any other teachers or anyone new for the first time? I'm glad to see my seatmate here, Rick Crawford. I appreciate you coming, friend, and voting right. Stand up and tell us who you are. I met you earlier. Introduce yourself behind. Not Rick. We know you, Rick. We're proud of you. Tell us who you are. Hey, is that a... I hear y'all have a teacher down there that's y'all trying to get rid of. Is that true?
She's allegedly gone AWOL.
Not. Well, we love her. We think we're gonna keep her. I tell you, y'all lucky to have her. She's doing a good job. We appreciate it. Any other new ones? It's your first time visiting with us. We're glad to have you with us. All right. If not, remember our rules. Keep your cell phones off. If you need to see anyone up here or pass a note, please give them to Janet or Jacob, and they'll be glad to give them to members of the committee. Without any further delay, let's have our Vice Chair, Representative Cassis, is going to assign legislation and announce meetings we'll be having. So, Representative Cassis, 21, all right?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Let's go ahead and assign legislation that has come to the Education Committee, and if you're taking notes there, I'll try to go slow. House Bill 267 by Representative Sheila Jones. This is a House bill relating to, I really don't know what it's relating to here. Let's see. These bills without titles. Let's go with the short title. Lord. Let's see. We're talking about developing a strategy for dangers of explicit images in texts. That one is being assigned to academic support. House Bill 271 by Representative or Chairman Len Walker. This is the Student Extracurricular Partnership Act, a bill that's dealing with participation in extracurricular activities. That's going to be an academic innovation. House Bill 276 by Representative Dawkins Hagler. Is that Hagler or Hagler? Hagler, thank you. This is a bill that she's asking to have a mandatory parent conference if there are 2 consecutive failing grades to a student. That is being assigned to academic achievement. House Bill 283 by Representative Beasley Teague. This is a bill dealing with rape prevention and personal safety programs. That is academic achievement. House Bill 285 by our illustrious chairman. That deals with school employees and criminal background checks. That is academic support. House Bill 305 by Chairman Ron Stevens. This is a bill that is requiring no less than 4-year terms for school board members. This is being assigned to academic support. House Bill 310 by Representative Hughley. This is the End Cyberbullying Bill, and this one is being assigned to academic support. House Bill 314, it's Jesse's Law by Representative Tom Dixon. That is being assigned to academic achievement. And although we're not going to hear them until after day 30, Senate Bill 38 by Majority Leader Chip Rogers. This is a bill in particularly dealing with state superintendent and his powers or authority to employ and dismiss employees. That will be assigned to academic support. And Mr. Chairman, that is all the so far.
That's good. We weren't going to have many bills. It didn't seem like, so we got a lot of work to do. We've set the calendar for the Representative Lindsay. The 31st day is what? 2 weeks from now. I think we've set the calendar where it's right away, isn't it?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
So, your number.
The day 30 is 2 weeks from next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday, that's what I thought. So it's got to, so we've got to move, set up meetings. I want you to know that I encourage all of you, when your vice chair, when the chairs of your subcommittee set these meetings up, please try to come, because we've got to get these bills moved, get them out of rules, and get them across over. So that's vital. And you saw the calendar that we set, very ambitious calendar, so we need to do it. We have, would you give us your report? I want to do something before we take the bill up, but give us your report from your subcommittee, Representative Casser.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The subcommittee on academic achievement did meet this week, and we did give a due pass by substitute to House Bill 186, Representative Nix, in order to expand the career pathway options for high school students. And that bill is before us today.
Okay. Representative Setzer, did y'all have a meeting, or do you have anything to report out today? What's your number? Number 18. All right.
Mr. Chairman, the only bill we had has already been reported in full committee, so
Okay.
we don't have any new listeners.
Okay. Representative Nix, do you have anything to report out today? Okay, so that's it. We have one bill. All right, before we start, I'd like to, does anyone have a question, anything they want to ask? Because we have a quick little update that I think that this was, we had to delay this presentation, have about 10 minutes to give it, so if y'all will bear with us, it's a very important presentation. And Mr. Dolinger was supposed to be here with the Georgia Partnership, but I don't think he's here. But Susan Walk, where is she? Hey, Susan. Hey, we're not that bad, so come on up. We're glad you're here. If you'd walk up to the podium and please present, or you can sit here, wherever you'd like to be. You can have the seat, or you can be up there. Want to be there, okay? And if you'll pull the mic right up to you and match the little, you'll see the little button behind you.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Yes, I apologize. Dr. Dillinger's not here. Hopefully, I'm an okay substitute for him. He is actually en route to Statesboro right now for a presentation for Southeast Leadership Georgia. So we really wanted to just spend a little bit of time to familiarize you all with our organization.
Pardon, just say that. I'm sorry.
Sure.
What's that? Can you wait or need? Okay, I'm sorry. Hold on. I'm sorry. Subcommittee meetings for next week. We have. Let's go ahead. That's a good point. I'm sorry.
No problem.
Because some of them may be slipping out before you get there. All right, go ahead. What? No, 18.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a academic innovation subcommittee hearing at. Thank you very much. I've got one at 1:30 on Tuesday to take up House Bill 251.
Okay.
So 1:30 on Tuesday for academic innovation.
Randy doesn't know yet. He'll be getting with you. David doesn't know yet, but they'll be getting with you. Okay? Is that okay? Good. Yes, I'm sorry. Let me say this, people. It's very important when for the chairpersons, when they sit there. We had to make a council, and I know some people have been invited down. You had a big crowd that was coming, and that's very inconvenient. So when you set your meetings, let's try to get with Janet. We'll try to coordinate them, and I think it's important to try to have them, and at least to try to get a quorum there where at least we can get started, and have these hearings. So thank you. Yeah. All right. I am so sorry, Susan, so go right ahead. And tell us a little bit who you are and go to it.
Absolutely. So my name is Susan Walker, and I currently serve as the Director of Policy and Research for the Georgia Partnership for Excellence in Education. So again, thank you for having us. I know you all have a very busy schedule, and so we're pleased and very glad to just take a couple minutes to let you know a little bit about our organization. I know several of you are already familiar and very involved with us. Representative Coleman sits on our board. Representative Morgan has been a graduate of one of our education policy fellowship programs, and Representative Carter has been very involved with our bus trip across Georgia. I've placed 2 handouts on the desk in front of you, and I have a couple extra copies if there's anyone here that would like a copy as well. Really, let me just first tell you a little bit about who we are, and then I'll tell you a little bit about what these resources are, and hopefully you'll find that they can be of value to your work here on the Education Committee. Our organization, the Georgia Partnership, was founded back in 1992, so we're coming up on our 20th anniversary. And what happened was the Georgia Chamber of Commerce and the Economic Developers Association came together and recognized that the business community needed to have a larger voice in the education system, realizing that the quality of our education impacts the quality of our workforce, which leads to our economic and community development. And so we were born 20 years ago, and we are now an independent organization. We are very nonpartisan, and we do all of our work really around research and policy and advocacy. So the materials that you have in front of you are some examples of the type of work that we produce, and our goal and our mission is to inform and influence leaders across the state of Georgia. And that's everyone from leaders like yourself in the General Assembly to local elected leaders to leaders in education and communities. And what we're really about is empowering people with high quality information, trying to take research and distill it down to those critical nuggets of information that will help you all make better decisions on behalf of our students in our public schools across the state. A couple of the key programs that we have, I mentioned the annual bus trip across Georgia. We've done that for 18 years now, and Representative Carter, I'm sure, can tell you stories about that. Last year, she brought a group of her high school students along the bus tour with us. We do that every year. We take business leaders and government leaders like yourselves to tour exemplary schools across the state. Really, again, we want to showcase that while we know there's work to do on public education, we have some very high-shining schools across the state that should be highlighted. Another of our programs I mentioned Representative Morgan was involved in is the Education Policy Fellowship Program. We've been doing this for 3 years now, and it's a 9 or 10-month leadership development and education policy development course where we have a group of stakeholders that get together monthly, hear from speakers, learn about education policy, and prepare themselves to become leaders in the education arena. So those are a couple of the things we do. But I think most importantly for you, I want to stress that we provide resources, and we can be a resource to you whenever there's an issue that you need to know more about. So for example, the 2 publications you have in front of you, the one that's spiral bound, it looks pretty thick, and you'll be amazed to know that this is really about 1/3 of the size it used to be. So we've tried to give you an education policy primer. This is sort of like everything you'd want to know about public education in Georgia. Everything from our early learning program to our teacher workforce to choices in education. This is sort of your primer, the 101 of getting yourself up to speed about education issues. And of course, a lot of this may be familiar knowledge to you all, but hopefully you can find a piece of that that will give you some more information when you're having discussions on the critical issues that you work on. And the second one that I want to highlight a little bit with you right now is our top 10 issues to watch in 2011. We've just released this within a couple weeks ago. This is something we do every year, and we take a look at national research. We take a look at things that may have happened in previous sessions of the General Assembly that have affected education, and we predict what the top 10 issues are going to be that will shape our public schools in this coming year. So again, this is relatively hot off the press, and I think you'll find this again to be a comprehensive resource for you that touches on everything from early learning, which is a huge conversation right now as we look at what's going to happen with our pre-K program, all the way to college and career readiness, another big issue that we're wrestling with as we have improved our graduation rate, but now face the dilemma of making sure kids have the availability and access to go on to college. So one thing I want to highlight for you real quickly, and then I'll take any questions if you have them. If you look at page 2 to 3 of that publication, this is something new. So if you're familiar with this work, as I said, we have done it for 7 years. This is something new. We've had some questions over the years that people say, you know, you've produced this top 10 issues report every year, but how are we doing? How did we do on last year's issues? What about the year before? So something we did this year is we took a look at 10 important indicators that really trace the birth to work pipeline for our kids. We wanted to know, where does Georgia rank, and what would it take for Georgia to be the 20th ranked state among all 50 states? And so we track that for you here with these little graphs, looking at where Georgia is currently and what state is currently ranked 20th on everything from early education enrollment to 4th grade reading to 8th grade math, up through high school graduation and graduation from college. And this is something that the partnership is committed to tracking every year, again, as we help to provide information so that we all have a better understanding of where our public schools are today and what goals we want to set for our state as we try and move forward. So again, I hope that you'll take a little bit of time, maybe leaf through this, page through it. Hopefully you'll find some information that's helpful to you. If there's ever any requests that you all have for information, I hope that you will contact myself or my boss, Steve Dolinger, and I'm happy to provide our contact information. I think Janet has it. I've been bugging her for a while to get up in front of you, so I want to make sure that you all know that we are available all the time for resources for any questions that you have, whether it's data gathering, whether it's trying to connect you with somebody who knows about teacher quality studies, whatever the issue is, we are your source for research and policy information. So I hope that gives you a good overview, and I'm happy to take any questions, Mr. Chair.
I have a Representative Ash.
I have a quick question on page
Sure.
28 of the primer. There's a chart that shows that Georgia is 17th in the way in which we resource pre-K. If we make the cuts that have been proposed to our pre-K program, how much will we be spending per child? And where will we rank?
That's a great question, and I haven't had a chance to look. I've looked at the governor's recommendations, but I can't remember what the cut he proposes is to the amount we'll be spending per child. So I'd have to look back at that to let you know. But I don't think there's a large change in the per pupil spending. I think the biggest change we're looking at, of course, is the reduction in the length of the program, the length of the day that the child is in pre-K, which I think is maybe the bigger issue to look at. But I can certainly get those
If
numbers
you get
for
us
you.
that sort of information.
Absolutely.
Thank you very
If
much.
you just bring that the next meeting or send it to us, that'd
Sure,
be great.
we'll do that.
All right, Representative, and I'm calling these in the order that the lights came on. Representative Setzner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate you being here today. I certainly acknowledge data doesn't do everything, but data does an awful lot for us in education. And I wanted to ask you if you've had the opportunity to look over the last 2 decades, really. We've seen a dramatic increase in the number of high schools that have gone to a block schedule for most classes. In many cases, all classes. In some cases, they're hybrids. I've had some educators that I greatly respect who have been both teachers and administrators in both block and traditional systems look at kind of below the surface of end-of-course test, really look at things like, you know, how far are you advancing in a textbook? You know, prior to block scheduling, you could get through X chapters versus, you know, after block scheduling, you get through Y chapters. How does that compare? There's been a connection made to me of, if you're controlling for demographics, controlling for the set of kids that are coming into the system, comparing in the Board of Regents institutions, the percentage of kids that are taking remedial classes in block systems versus the kids that are taking remedial classes in traditional schedule systems. Have you done any investigation, or do you have any data around that specific connection or anything related that you could fill us in on?
Sure, and I think, you know, again, what I'll do is write these down and make sure I get back to you with the exact answers. As far as I know, the university system doesn't have that aggregated readily available to the public. They do track how kids are doing their freshman year of college, and they do what's called high school feedback reports, which is usually for individual high schools, so that a high school, if they request that information, has an idea of how their students did when they progressed on to the university system. The more general research that I've seen about block class and class scheduling, I think would say that there's not a real clear delineation between how those kids are performing. I think the bigger factor is the quality of the teacher, whether that teacher has 50 minutes or 2 hours to teach the class. But I can certainly get in touch with the researchers at the university system and let you know.
And I would submit to you, Mr. Chairman, just in wrapping up, I'd submit to you there's probably a really telling statistic that grade inflation notwithstanding, the issues of, you know, the courses offered, controlling for courses offered and the kids themselves, the screening they do going into the public institutions, whether they need to go to remedial classes or not. To me, that is perhaps the gold standard in getting at that distinction between the way classes are delivered, whether it's a geometry class in a traditional or block schedule. And I just think there's some truth there that I've never seen uncovered, and frankly, not had the time myself to investigate, but just something to consider.
Yeah, and I will say that, I think the research clearly tells us that there's a disconnect between what's happening at high school graduation and the preparedness our kids have when they enter the college system, because we do know that while we've had an increase in our high school graduation rate, and that's great news, we've also seen an increase in the percentage of students that require remediation their freshman year. So I think the good news is that our leaders in the state recognize that and are working to fix those kinks between the system, but realizing that we have to make sure that our high school diploma really means college readiness is something that still needs to be worked on.
I encourage you to get together and him to further define what he needs and work with him on that. Thank you. All right, Representative Mayon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What are your thoughts on the governor's, now the proposal for pre-K was to reduce the day from 6 hours to 4. What are your thoughts on the impact that will have on the providers, and how will they respond?
I think right now most of the providers and early childhood advocacy groups are still trying to really analyze what that's going to mean. There's not a whole lot of research that's specifically on the length of day. There's one study I was just reading that shows that the longer day has had some additional benefit for a certain population of students. But I think really we're still trying to analyze what that means. And, unfortunately, there's always going to be a trade-off with this budget climate. So if you can increase the number of slots and hopefully reduce the waiting list of kids around the state for pre-K, that's wonderful. But again, we want to make sure that we're maximizing the time and access those kids have to pre-K. So I think, again, there's not a lot of research to go on, and so I think we're still trying to analyze what that impact is going to be and how do we make sure that the kids, during their reduced day, if that's the route we take, still have the quality instruction they need for that to be a program that gets them ready for school.
Okay. All right, one more.
Follow
I have
up.
two. I'll take these two because we got a tough bill we need to get invaded. And are you going to be able to stay around?
Sure,
Okay,
yeah.
good. All right.
Impact on the parents by shortening the day. Folks who have to go to work and have an 8-hour day and they can't get
Right. I mean, the reality is for most parents, and I think providers will tell you this, those parents are still going to need somewhere for their child to be a safe space for that rest of the work day. And so I think a lot of centers, that's going to mean they provide some additional services after the official pre-K day is over that would probably be provided at a cost to parents.
After the budget hearings and everything, we're going to have this, I think tomorrow, don't we have it? And after some of this, I will allow us maybe next week to have a pre-K discussion if you'd like to, some questions, because then we'll have more answers. I think now's a little premature. Representative Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I want to be a cheerleader for the fellowship program. So any of my colleagues, if you want to apply, you absolutely should. It's a great way to learn a lot more about what we do. Some of it is during session, and they try to be nice and flexible, but I would highly recommend it. And thank you. You guys do excellent work. Would like for you to talk just for a second about dropouts in Georgia. There is a challenge, and it is debatable about what our real graduation rate is, but I don't think we have enough discussion about dropout and how we define that, what those numbers are, and if there's any work being done in that area.
Yeah. I think, to your point, do we really know what the graduation rate is? I think we're getting there, and I think the new data system that's in place is going to allow us for the first time to see what our cohort rate is. So taking that 9th grade class and really figuring out where each of those kids was 4 years later. I think the good news is that any way you measure it, we have seen an increase in our number of graduates, which means a decrease in the dropouts. But yes, clearly we still have a problem with students dropping out. I think we have to continue on the path that we've been going on, which is to stay focused on that. I think we probably don't know enough about why students are dropping out and why certain populations of students drop out at higher rates than others, and that I think is an area where we definitely need some more research so that we can better understand those student situations.
Representative Morgan, I want to thank you for that question because that's going to lead right in to a study that was done all summer, and that this bill that we're doing to get at what you're talking about and be working with them. So that's a good lead-in. Thank you for that question. You knew what you were doing, didn't you? Thank you so much for being with us. And we encourage you to stay around, and if anybody had any questions, they can. But I think that's a great lead-in for our next topic of discussion. That's this House bill that we just passed. So, Representative Cassis, if you would present your recommendation to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And before that, if I'm given the opportunity, there's one bill we missed in the assignments, and that's House Bill 81, which was transferred over, was recommitted to education out of appropriations, and that bill is being assigned to academic support. House Bill 81, yours truly. It's the fiscal impact bill.
The one we really like, yeah, we all like, yeah. And there's also a bill that we're working on, Representative Cassis, I think it's 202, but we're not going to sign it right now, but we will be dealing with that one soon. I have several of you in the audience that are working with me on that one, and hopefully we have a recommendation on that one soon too, so you'll know where that is, because I had some questions on that one today, but I'm not ready to sign it to a committee. Also, before we have Representative Cassis introduce us, I want to thank many of you who've been working with us, and for the meeting last week on the QBE study. It did pass the House. It's going to the Senate, and hopefully Fran will take it, and we'll move that next week. I hope we will. And we did meet with the superintendents, as I told you, and with the teachers of the year yesterday, half of them, meeting with the other half next week. Great input. Many of you go back and talk to your superintendents and your teachers, because they took one from each RESA district and they contacted all, and it was a great meeting, some great ideas, met about 2 hours. And I'm going to tell you, those teachers of the year, what a breath of fresh air. We talk about, teachers, we have some of the best I've ever seen. They were marvelous. And I feel so good about that meeting, and I appreciate them being here. So, Representative Cassis, now let's go ahead and introduce the bill for today.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, as we mentioned, House Bill 186 by Representative Nix was given a due pass by the committee by substitute. It was a great meeting, Mr. Chairman. We really had a great time. I think we dubbed it our Love Fest. And certainly the only discussion that we had was on a date, and I know that Representative Nix is going to give us a little more insight on that, but it's a great bill.
Very good. So would you like there, or you can either go to the table, wherever you'd like to be?
I believe I'll stay here if it's okay.
Yes, sir.
If you'll turn me on.
You're on.
I'm a preacher. I have to be standing up. If I sit down, we could be here all day.
Remember, no baptism today. Let's just move it on.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to present this bill. And I think it is a bill that addresses a lot of the things that have already been brought up just in our discussion, as you say, the dropout rate, et cetera. Let me give credit before I begin to Representative Steve Davis for his work and his insistence on keeping this idea alive, and I will give you just a quick background on our bill. It's House Bill 186, and I will be working from LC 334065S.
Everyone should have that in your folder. Be sure you do, okay?
Representative Davis, for a number of years, had brought a bill to address the one diploma system and possibly go back to at least a 2 diploma system, or maybe even a 3 diploma system. There was a tremendous amount of debate on that, and probably could have passed that to go to a 2 diploma system last year. Chairman Brooks decided that he did not want to do that without some study, and we had a study committee over the summer. He asked myself and Representative Davis to co-chair that, and we had a study committee that met 3 times where we met across the state, but we had 3 big open meetings, asked for participation from everyone to talk about that particular issue. We had a number of people on that committee: myself, Representative Davis, Representative Carter, Representative Kaiser, Representative Maxwell. Chairman Coleman was part of it, Senator Freddie Sims, and Senator Jim Butterworth. We had broad participation. We had educators. We had the Department of Education, the Technical College System of Georgia. We had the people from the Regents. We had Page. We had GAE. We had parents come and speak to us. We had students come and speak to us. One of the groups that we asked to come that usually gets left out of this was employers. We asked employers to come and talk to us about what they would expect from a high school graduate from a school in the state of Georgia. That was very interesting. That led to us having a meeting hosted by Kia. And the ones that went to that will tell you that was a fantastic meeting. We had a great meeting. We got a tour of the facility. Even got a discount certificate to buy a new Kia. So that was pretty interesting in and of itself. But as part of that meeting, we had other industries there. We had the human resources manager from Walmart Distribution. We had members of the Chamber of Commerce. We had the military come. And I'm real excited to tell you today, I don't know how many of you were on the House floor when Major General Ron Bailey from the Marine Corps made his presentation today. But he was talking about exactly the things that we're talking about in this bill in terms of being able to reach those young people who may be at the verge of falling through the cracks and finding a way to get them a high school diploma, get them in something that will work. And I spoke to him as he left the floor. I told him a little bit about our bill, and he was extremely excited about what he heard. He told me that he would come back to the state of Georgia and talk with us about what we're trying to do. He felt like we were definitely on the right path, so I was excited about that and just wanted to share that with you. Real quickly, what do you need in a high school graduate? This was the question that was asked. The thing that we found out, especially from the employers, was that it was not the type of diploma that they had. That mattered very little. But they kept talking to us about things like soft skills. You know, will people show up on time? Will they be there every day? Do they have a good attitude? Can they work in a team? All of those things kept coming up. And that was very, very key to the discussion with the employers. The one diploma idea, as we got further into our discussions, we came to the conclusion that there's really nothing wrong with the one diploma idea, but we've got to develop multiple pathways to get there. It would be great to think that every student we graduate will be ready to go and be successful in a 4-year college, but that is not reality. And that has driven a number of students to the point of just either just waiting to drop out or to not make the choices that they need to be successful. So we're trying to figure out a way to help them be successful. I'm calling it rigor with relevance. We don't want to give up any rigor, but we want to make this relevant to get the attention of these young people that here again, if they can find something they're interested in, all of the other things begin to light up for them and it begins to work. The bill focuses on individual students, providing as many options as possible. We'll talk about embedded academics in CTAE courses. We'll emphasize proficiency rather than just seat time. We'll require greater cooperation between the Department of Education, the Technical College System of Georgia, and Regents. And this is to benefit both the students so that they don't waste a lot of time and effort, and it also benefits the taxpayer because there is a lot of remediation involved in that, and we're hoping to be able to work on that. And then also we'll address this idea of soft skills as well as we go forward. So if you would look with me at the bill, beginning in the first part there where we put the intent out, you will see most of the kind of the important parts. On line 2, you see career pathways, career pathway options. As you come down, we'll talk about career clusters. We'll talk about academic course standards to be embedded in CTAE courses. We'll talk about end-of-course assessments so that those students who have taken a CTAE course that has those embedded standards will be able to take that course and prove that they have mastered that part of the curriculum. We'll talk about dual credit, and we will talk about soft skills and what that means for our students and for the potential employers. If you look down in Section 1, and I'm not going to go line by line, but I want to highlight some of the things that I think are important. Line number 20, high school students must understand that they have options and pathways available to them to get that high school diploma so that they can be prepared for success in post-secondary education, a career, or both. And that is just extremely important that we communicate that. I'll talk a lot about communication. That's one of the things we found that may be missing. Some of the things that we're shooting for are actually available. They're just not being communicated to the students and to the parents. If you look on line 23, we're talking about local school systems providing every student with choices that are academically rigorous and relevant to a career and to technical pathways. We are talking on line 25, institutions must work together. That is a very important part, is the cooperation that we get between our educational institutions. If we're going to have CTAE standards embedded in academic courses, we want those to be able to be recognized and it will take a cooperation between the institutions. And I must say this, as we have gone on into this process and we have spoken with the Regent system, we've spoken with the Technical College System of Georgia, we've spoken with the Department of Education, I'm sensing a real sense of cooperation, and I believe that everybody's kind of getting on board, and we're beginning to realize that this is extremely important. On line 30, we address teachers having the professional development they need to be able to provide these standards, the rigorous standards that we're looking for. On line 32, we talk about high school students should clearly understand the options that they have for dual high school and post-secondary credit, and the state should properly fund these options. Now, we had some funding language earlier in our bill. We took that out. Some other people are working on that area, but we think it would be a good idea if there were a way to fully fund that. On line 34, it talks about every state agency, post-secondary institution, and local school system having a collective goal of having these students be able to graduate with some post-secondary credit. We know that the student of this day and going forward will need additional training after high school. If we can give them a leg up while they're in school by doing CTAE courses, by providing them these pathways that get them on something of interest, we think that's good, and that collective goal is extremely important. Line 36, Georgia strategic industries must be partners. I think we found that out as we went around and as we talked to employers, as we talked to the people at Kia, as we talked to the people with Walmart. We had others. We met at the hospital over in Henry County. They talked about what they need. That's a group that I think may have been left out of our discussion quite a bit in the last few years as we looked at, it seemed like driving everything to that four-year college. And I think that they must be a part of it. And finally, in that section, line 42, and I put a red star by this, and I hope you will too, Georgia students must understand that a high school diploma is the key to success in the workforce. We got that from just about everybody that we talked to. When we talked to the military, here again, they said, we don't care what kind of diploma it is, but they've got to have a diploma just in order to be able to come and to apply to be in the military. There's a lot of people out there right now, and if you don't have that diploma, it doesn't count. The people with Walmart said the same thing. If you don't have that diploma, that's the key that just opens the door. So we've got to let them know how important that is, and we have got to do everything to make sure that they get there. At the bottom of page 2, on line 58 again, we talk about the coordination between the high schools and the higher institutions of higher education. And again, trying to lessen the need for the academic remediation that we heard about earlier. Let's get those students the training and the education that they need before they get there so that we can save the time and the effort as they go forward. At the top of page 3, line 63, we want students who complete the core curriculum and meet the requirements for to be able to meet the requirements for post-secondary college admission. If we have a student that takes that CTAE course that has the embedded academics and they pass that proficiency test, we want that to be accepted. We don't want them to say that you've got to go back and take that course again because it was part of that. Now, it's going to take some coordination, but here again, we're beginning to feel that coordination coming from the Department of Education and from Regents and from the technical college system. So here again, that coordination factor is extremely important there. Section 3, this section was added per the support and per the request of Superintendent Barge. The career cluster model here, these are 16 nationally recognized models of career clusters that we are asking them to develop. Now, the key there too is this, on line 75, we're asking to include these, but it will not be limited to this number of 16. I'll not read those to you, but here again, we're trying to make it as flexible and as open as we can so that different school systems, different charter school systems can be able to develop their own program. But here again, trying to touch on as much interest as we can for the students and to reach them. If you move down to the bottom of that page, we talk about the embedded standards in academic core subjects and those being recognized as appropriate. The state board shall work to ensure that the coursework meets post-secondary requirements for acceptance. And here again, the coordination factor that comes in, working to see that those courses are properly structured so that they're meeting the requirements and they're getting the academics that they need in those courses. On line 98, local school systems and individual charter schools may develop and implement their CTA courses with the embedded standards that seem to work in their area. They'll have to meet the standards, but here again, we want it to be where they can develop things that may be appropriate for their area. Some of them may have a strong interest in agriculture. We had in my area of the state, manufacturing with Kias is important. We talked about Savannah as being someone with the logistics area, the traffic area that may be important. But we're trying to make that as flexible as possible. Line 102, the end of course assessments. If a student takes that course that has those embedded standards, we want them to be able to take that test, if there is a test, and we know that there's not a test available, to be able to prove that they have mastered that, the academics that are part of their of that course, and to be able to get credit for it. And when they have done that, if they can show that they've mastered it, we want them to be able to get the dual credit, to get credit for both the CTAE course and the academic course that is embedded there as well. Line 113, we have the word consultation, and here again, this is coordination. This is the working together of the Board of Regents, the University System of Georgia, the Board of Technical and Adult Education, and the DOE, to make sure that we have a statewide plan implementing methods for students to earn units of high school credit based on a demonstrated subject area competency. And when we say that, what we're doing is we're trying to get away from just a requirement of seat time. That is where you can pass it. If you've got the proficiency to be able to pass that and be able to move on. That is something that has come up over and over and over. It was interesting yesterday. We had Mark Whitlock to speak to us, who is the CEO of the Central Education Center in Noonan, which is a charter college and career academy that is pretty well known around the state. But he said that was extremely critical for them. If they can do that, they can provide a lot more opportunity for these young people to participate in things that interest them. And he thought that was a really good idea. The only place we had question yesterday comes up on the timing of when we're asking that this be done. The bill is asking for the State Board to adopt the plan not later than June 30th of this year and to commence phasing the plan in during the 2011-2012 school year. We had some discussion about that yesterday, and we may need to discuss that some today, but that was really the only place that we had any real discussion. The idea was that we want it to be done with all urgency. We don't want to put them in a position where they just can't accomplish it. But we don't want to let this sense of urgency, and let's make this thing happen, to go away while we're working on it. On page 5 at the top, we've got a couple of definitions: dual credit course, eligible institution, and then probably one of the other real critical parts of this bill is in lines 136 and 137. The department shall develop appropriate forms and counseling guidelines for dual course credit courses and shall make such forms and guidelines available to local school systems. This is where we seem to have the most breakdown as we did our hearings, as we heard from the department and as we heard from local educators and principals. The department said, we've got all this great gee whiz stuff out here, and the people at the local level saying, we didn't know we had that. And I've had parents email me and said, what happened to move on when ready? Why can't we get those things done? We're not getting the communication done. So that is something that I think is extremely important, and will begin to pull things together for us. Finally, in section 4, we heard this idea of soft skills just many times from employers talking about what they need in a student. When we asked them what they needed academically, it was pretty easy. They did not seem to feel like they needed 4 years of math in most instances. They need the basics of the core curriculum, but they immediately moved to the soft skill idea. The head at Kia, when we asked him, he went immediately to talk about that, the need for soft skills, for training, and for assessment. So what we've done in Section 4 is we've taken the Governor's Office of Workforce Development, who now is really working with those ideas of the work-ready communities. They're already doing some work here. And so that we would have a standard that could be recognized, especially by employers, we're asking them to develop a standard assessment. I've talked with Melvin Everson, who is heading that up now. He was quite excited about it. He fully understands what we're trying to do. And the reason we're trying to do that is we feel like it would be easier for employers to recognize and to value that rather than having each individual system do it on their own. So that's where we are now, and why we put that piece in there and put it with workforce development. So if I might sum up the bill, the main thing we tried to do all along was be fully student focused, make the student the number one part of this, and try to find out what we can do to give each one of them that key that it takes to unlock that door to get that diploma. We tried to make it as broad and as flexible as we can. Much of the language will say as appropriate, so that we're not just mandating you do this, but we're saying that it's extremely important to do it and be as flexible as possible. Rigor with relevance. We're not backing off of the rigor, but we've got to find a way. You can have all the rigorous curriculum in the world, but if the students are just turning it off and not participating, it's not going to do anything. So we're trying to draw them in with the relevance, with these courses, with the career clusters, with the CTAE courses. I mentioned this a number of times. Coordination and communication are just extremely important. And finally, the best summary, I think, of the bill, Mark Whitlock yesterday, excuse me, after he had testified, we were talking about this, and Mark is really an expert in this area, and I really value his opinion. I had never met him personally, but I heard about him so much. He was really excited about the bill. His take on it was, this is allowing education to connect the dots. We've got all of these things that we want to accomplish. We've got a great Department of Education. We've got a great regent system, technical college system, and this will allow them to have a framework to be able to connect the dots, to be able to bring that student in there and make sure that they get that rigorous, relevant education they need, and they can get that high school diploma. So with that, Mr. Chairman, that is my bill. As you can tell, I'm quite passionate about it. I don't know whether you would like to do it or not, but Representative Davis, of course, had been very has been right on board with this. If you would like to allow him to speak.
Mr. Representative Davis, anything you'd like to say before we take questions? And I have a lot of questions, so we're going to...
I'll just be very brief and echo Representative Nix's comments. Nothing that we do is that's worthy is easy, and this has been a long journey, several years worth of work. All the members that were on the committee, the study committee, I thank you. All the people that are sitting here in the rows that participated. This is really, this focuses on, he talked about relevance. We need to make sure that the students know we've got thousands and thousands of students. They're individuals, they're special, and when they are more engaged in more decision making in the choices of the pathways that they take, they're going to do better in school, and they're going to be more engaged, and they're going to be more focused on their studies. And I'm very excited about this. Obviously, I started with multiple diplomas, and this is where we're getting to. But I'm excited. This is even going to give them more flexibility and choices than even I was after in the beginning when we started this journey. But, Mr. Chairman, thank you for letting me participate as a non-education committee member. As a co-chair on the study committee, it was a great pleasure going around the state and listening to the teachers and the counselors and administrators, in addition to all these different organizations that have participated to get us to where we're at today.
Representative Davis, I think you are about ready to be a member of this committee. You've learned a lot, and I think you're ready. I don't know if y'all know, his son has been just recently elected as one of the youngest Board of Education members in your county. So he has a big interest now, and I noticed it's settling him down a little bit. Some of the things he's wanted to do, he now asks his son. So we appreciate it. I want to say this is probably, I've served on a lot of committees, and I've seen a lot of committees work, but not in my legislative career. And I mean, a lot of people do. Have I seen a committee with as much passion, much work, and it's hard work, and I mean probing, looking, working. So I commend you and what you've done. And Representative, I mean, what y'all have done, Davis, I mean, y'all have worked hard, and I can't just applaud you enough for the fine work. And we do have some questions, and let's take them. All right, first question that came on, and calling at number 14. Where are we? Okay, all right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative Nix. This is a tremendous bill, like I said, in subcommittee, and I did have to leave subcommittee early, and I apologize for that. But I do have a concern, like we said, about the date of June 30th of this year on line 119. Okay. If this, in theory, passes the Senate in late March, early April, and signed by the governor in late April, you know, the state board has to have 30 days comment before they make a rule, and we're literally talking about a very, very short amount of time, and I would not want that policy, which is going to be important, to not have time to be fully vetted. And if the department tells me this train is already going down the tracks, then I'm not going to worry about it. I just don't want them to be rushed with a statutory deadline that lowers the quality of the end product. So one idea I did have was, you know, making this like a preliminary plan, but it might be simpler from a legislative point of view just to move the date back a month or two. I don't know what the department thinks or what the committee thinks, but that's a concern that I had.
Well, I do know that Representative Nix has been in touch with them. I've met with them several times, has consulted them on the dates. So I personally, I would love to just leave that up to them and what they see. You know, I don't want to push them, but we've talked about it, and we'll work with them. And I see them nodding their head this way, I'm sure. And I know, but we will let them get. If you will, I think we just leave it to them. If they think they can, we push them. I agree with you, though. So, okay. Is that what you're asking? To get with the State Department and decide what they think?
Okay.
Is that good with you?
Sure.
I personally would rather do that than us start amending dates and things. Let them work out that. But, you know, for what they think.
As long as they're not going to arbitrarily be in trouble, then I'm fine.
No, I don't think we need to do that because that'll just sabotage everything. Yeah. And we still have the Senate to go through, and a lot of times we can do that.
Okay.
All right. Representative Ash, is that your bill? All right. Yes.
It is. One thing that we didn't do in subcommittee yesterday is ask you the question about fiscal impact. And when we got to an appropriations subcommittee, there was some discussion that we were going to need some more money to do this. Tell me your intent and why there's not a fiscal note attached.
Okay. I felt that there was no reason for a fiscal note. We're not mandating anything. We're trying to direct the resources we have in a different direction. That's the way I see it now. No one had asked me about a fiscal note. I'm sure that would be great if we had additional funding, but I don't believe that anything here. What we're doing is looking at direction more than specifics. If we were mandating that they had to do, like if we mandated they had to do all of the end of course tests and have them ready by a specific time, those are fairly expensive to do, and I think we would have to do it. But we're asking them to do this in the course of their normal course of business. So it's my opinion that there would not be a fiscal note needed.
Help me with line 33 that says the state should properly fund these options.
Well, and here again, this is an idea that the dual enrollment options, this is I think a worthy goal. I don't think it's going to happen. We had some funding as part of this bill, some specifics, but we were afraid that we could lose some of the good things that we have in there if we tied it to that. I understand there's some other people that are working on some funding legislation that will touch on this.
Department of Career and Technical looking at some things. They have some funds, but we're not. This bill is not dependent on additional funding. It's redirecting and direction.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good question, Representative. All right,
thank you, Mr. Chairman. To my sweet mate, I sometimes think I'm the only one here at the Capitol who's working like after 7 p.m. in the office, and Representative Nix was there after me many nights, so I can vouch for his level of effort. Not having been in subcommittee, I've just got some simple questions. And again, these are just pretty rudimentary things. With the clusters that are listed in Section 3, do you anticipate these are going to be standard packages that all schools would offer each of the clusters? Would schools choose a subset of these clusters? How do you, Mr. Chairman, I've got a couple of questions in this.
Yeah. No, it's my understanding this is a national model, and the flexibility is for the systems to decide the ones that would fit more into their area. As I mentioned before, maybe manufacturing would be one for sure in the LaGrange area because of the Kia manufacturing facility. Maybe the transportation, distribution, and logistics in the Savannah area. So no, it would not be, I don't think it would be possible for every school to have every one of these, but they would be able to use those, and they are national models that have the requirements that go along with them to develop those courses.
Does this contemplate each student coming through our system picking one of these? And if so, what of the 24 courses, 24 courses required, what percentage of those are more tracked, and which one of those are just basic? What percentage of those are just traditional core classes?
Well, each of these would have the core in them. I couldn't tell you that for sure. May have to ask the department if they can tell me the answer to that in terms of the percentage of core curriculum that is in here in the
Tom, do you have a set?
Well, the units required for graduation, that rule has not changed. You still need the same amount required because this is not a graduation rule. So, in essence, it's similar to going to college. At a certain point, when you get a bachelor's degree, you make decisions on elective, where you're going. So it's really, in simplistic terms, similar to that.
But again, my question was, do we require 23 classes to graduate now? Is that the number? 24. Of that, I mean, a general percentage. I mean, in college.
Your core is embedded in these. If they so check your core, your English, your science, and it may be, as you heard him say, some of the embedded, maybe they take math 1 and 2 because of the integrated math, but we may accept math 3 could be that we're working on could be the remedial math that 30%. Now we're talking about the 30% that maybe are dropping out.
Yes, Mr. I just have no point of reference for the percentage of courses that are more, if it's agricultural and natural, food, natural resources related. What percentage is it? Half the courses are core, half are more tracked. I just have no point of reference. Is there any?
Again, you're still required for math, for language arts, for science, and a lot of districts require more than 24 units for graduation. Some as much as 28 around the state. So there is still a required number that are specific courses, and these pathways are outside of that. Similar to what kids have now, they may choose to take a pathway in welding or a pathway in graphic arts, as electives to get to a graduation pathway. So it really doesn't change the graduation requirements specifically that students need. Although in the bill it does talk about embedded curriculum.
There you go.
And it does offer some flexibility.
What we're doing is that child's going strictly college prep, takes math 1, 2, 3, 4, all the integrated math. That child's going into, let's say, I don't know, let's say welding or something. They may take math 1 and 2, and we're finding that, so we found that some of these children, 30% to 40%, are taking 6 to 8 periods to take those 4 maths because they aren't passing it because it's so difficult, the integrated math. So what we're saying is some of these embedded math, like in the agricultural education, maybe agricultural math that would be accepted as one of their maths. They still having the 4 maths, but it could be the agriculture math. They go in that.
I understand.
And these can't be. We can't just say every one because every one would be specific and would be designed for that specific student.
I understand, Mr. Chairman. I would just conclude by saying to the author, I don't have an intuitive sense of this. Something that Superintendent Barge, I think, very aptly said when he came in last week or the week before was that as we create these pathways, you want the ability for students to pursue something and decide, I'm 2 or 3 years into this post-secondary thing. I don't like it. I want to go to college, or I'm in college. I want to go to technical school. To be fully comfortable, I just need to have a more intuitive sense of how much specialization is in this high school program, particularly to the extent each student is going to make a choice. What percent, how much specialization is here, how much general commonalities here. Conceptually, I think all of us are with you. I just don't know.
And here again,
are we going to strike the balance of broadness versus specificity? I don't have a sense of that yet.
Here again, the idea here is to create these concepts and allow them to kind of fill it in, and it will be more student-focused. I've got a big manual there on career clusters that I'll be glad to share with you that will probably answer those questions to the specificity that you need.
Yeah. And one thing you've got to realize, we're operating already under a law. Just the bridge bill that passed, just a good example we passed here, that's requiring the counselors to sit down with, starting with 8th graders, they're already doing it, and they're working with them and trying to guide them. You know, here's what you need to do if you want to do this. Here's what you need to do. So there's a lot of guidance and counseling that's no additional cost, already taking place. And all we're saying, we were concerned, or they were, concerned about that 30 to 40% that getting up there and just dropping out. And this is, in this bill, it's just over and over, cooperation. And we were concerned that, just as you said, that child wanted to transfer, that maybe the technical school said, all right, you can transfer, but you're going to take everything over again. We're saying, no. What is it you're going to agree to accept where that child, if he decides, I don't want to go to technical, I want to go to, college, that coursework would be accepted. So that's what they're looking at.
Mr. Chairman, I would have loved to have graduated high school with some of these skills.
Oh, gosh, I think everybody needs to.
That having been said, I still think we have to wrestle with the issue, is high school primarily vocational education?
No.
Or is high school primarily liberal education?
No.
And high school, in my mind, still has to remain primarily liberal education, secondly vocational education, and that balance,
and that's what
to
we're
me,
saying.
is the crux of how this plays out. That's
Well,
just a concern.
look at his manual. I think they'll answer your question.
As it was shared with me, all of these will have to be within the Common Core standards.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're going way out somewhere and doing something that doesn't conform to that. So they will have to conform. If you're getting a math credit for one of these pathways courses, it will have to conform to that Common Core standard. So we're not changing the standards. We're just trying to change a different way of delivering it, is the way I understand it.
Your rigor is still there. All right? Let's go 22. All right?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Nix, isn't it true that maybe 8 years ago our current state school superintendent, Dr. John Barge, created these clusters for the CTA division as state director of CTAE, and it's probably a matter of tweaking what he did 8 years ago in order to make this thing work?
I believe the lady knows of what she speaks, and he did develop this, and I think they were ready to roll out, but then they were kind of put on a shelf and never really rolled out. So I think that's one of the reasons he wanted these brought back in. He is very familiar with it and has the ability to implement it. So
thank you.
Good. All right.
Proper time. I'd love to make a motion.
All right. I'll take one more question. That's it. Then we're going to have a motion. 28. All right, Representative Cousins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Amy just stole my thunder, but I knew she would. I just actually wanted to illustrate something to make sure that I'm clear. As a member of the committee, and I didn't get to the Kia plant, but as a small business owner, I'm so thrilled that, first of all, I thought I was being punished when I was put on Steve Davis's diploma committee. But I was thrilled. But honestly, I was thrilled when I couldn't go to Kia. I'm going to be there in a couple of weeks. But I was thrilled for the information. What we learned throughout the process of looking at the diploma options was amazing. And to hear employers talking about the things that we, small business owners say all the time, kids can't believe they're being fired because they're habitually late. But what I wanted to see if I could illustrate and tell me if I'm correct, and I know Tom hit on it exactly, which is the intent is to create some flexibility. So is it not true that, if, as an example, if a kid's taking an architect class, and within that architecture class there is Math 1, they don't need to go and spend a whole block, another course in Math 1. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
And I think it works more if I understand the program. Usually in the 3rd or 4th year math, especially in the CTAE courses, which would be very similar to these. Yes.
Right. All right. I have no more questions, so I will take your comment now.
All right. I want to make a motion, do pass, for substitute to House Bill 186.
All right. I have a motion, do pass, to House Bill substitute 334065S. Do I have a second? I have seconds all over the place. Do I have any more comments? Yes, sir. You've had enough time, I think. No question. I will take one question quickly. All right.
Mr. Chairman, is it the will of the committee to address the date issue? Or is that something
We're
you
going to
prefer
do
to
that through
as
the Senate. Yes, I intend to look at that.
Thank
What
you.
I instructed Representative Nix to get with the State Department, and before it goes to the Senate, yes, to address that date. I think we got to. Is that okay with the committee? Keep it. I'll keep my word on that one. All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Unanimous. Hey, let's give them I'm telling you, I'm proud of that work. Now I want 100% graduation in 2 years. I want to encourage you, Randy, to get with, really, I think you need to get with Ed and get with anyone else that wants to see this embedded. And Tom, I'm instructing Tom Wilson. Is he gone already? To get with Randy. All right. Yes, sir. Call security. He's going to get all. Hey, that was the best. Hey, Margaret, that was the best line I've heard yet. Thank y'all. Remember, if you haven't paid your dues, pay your dues. And is Josh here? I don't think he is. We got a dinner coming up. I'll let you know the date. And Brian?